All right, welcome back. If you've been with me for any length of time, you're probably starting to figure out that I make a fair amount of mistakes and have to go back and do stuff a second time. The good thing about that is because I'm making these videos, you don't have to make the same mistakes I do. So here we go again. I got one. So let's get this thing rolling and I'll come back and tell you all about it. All right, so what did I do this time? Well, it was nipple mania that got me this time. So I told you I got my ARB differential breather kit here, and I have opened that thing up. And this is the nipple that I got last episode going around. I found this information on this off of a CJ-5 forum thread where somebody was tapping this and putting some hose on it and kind of doing their own breather. However, I bought this ARB kit, which comes with this little breather unit and kind of this manifold on the back. And they provide 4 of these little press-on fittings along with this tubing. So the way this works, I'll set my little manifold thing down, is basically these are those kind of fittings that you just press the tube into. It locks on there, you can't take it off. And if you do need to take it off, you press this fitting in and then the tubing slides back out. So pretty cool little thing. You don't have to worry about, it's not a one-time connector. However, this tubing that they provide is too big to fit over these nipples. So you can see that if I hold this up here, there's just no way you're gonna heat this up and stretch it out enough to make it fit over that nipple. So I have pulled this nipple out of the Dana 30 front end. I have screwed one of these in its place. It did take the same threads, so luckily my hole is the proper size, but now I can just clip that hose in and there we go. I'm all done down on the bottom end. And then when we get up to the firewall, this is the part that we're going to mount on the firewall, and I'm calling it a little manifold because that's the best explanation of what I kind of think it is. So ARB has built this thing so it can do 4 of these fittings into it. So I've got plugs in these holes, so they supply these 2 plugs to cover up the holes that you're not using if you're only using 2 of these. And let's try to take these out without dropping them. So you can plug off 2 of the fitting holes, but you basically have 2 on this side, 2 on this side, and then this is the little part that lets the air in. And then if we spin that off real quick, you'll be able to see that there's 2 holes here that we can use to put screws through there or bolts to bolt this to the firewall. So we have everything we need to do to get this together. However, when they said that you can do 4 individual units, they only provide enough tubing and fittings for 2 because it takes 2 of these little fittings, one on the differential end and one here on the manifold end. So you can order a kit that's an expansion kit that has 4 more of these fittings and another stretch of hose. So I think that's what I'm going to do so that I have enough room to put transmission and transfer case into this as well. But just to recap, go back to that last episode and cancel your order for these nipples if you ordered these. I think I even put the link to, I think I bought these off Quadratech or Morse 4x4 or something, but I think I even put the link out there. I'm sorry. I didn't open this box from ARB before I started putting this in, so that was just my bad. I should have really paid closer attention to what ARB was providing me. So forget about these things and just go with the stuff that ARB sends you, and I think you're going to be much happier. So there's that mistake. Done and done and undone. So I've already fixed the front end, and as I drill and tap this rear end, I'll put one of these in and then I'll mount my hose. Now what they said about this hose is it's not all that flexible. So you could probably, I imagine if you really need to do a bend on it, they said you can heat it up with some hot water, or I imagine a heat gun would do the same thing. And they kind of suggest routing it about where your brake lines go. So I think the back end will be fairly easy to come up off the brake line and come up to that center brake line in the center of the frame, and then I'll just shoot it up forward and come up the firewall. So I think I'll probably have plenty of hose for that, but we'll see once I get into there. So I'm glad we caught that before I got miles down the road, and I only used one of those fittings, so I could probably return a couple of them or whatever, use them for something else. I'm gonna rip the front clip apart of this thing because my engine has been shipped from S&J Engines. It's in transit. I got the shipping information today, or at least the shipping notification that it had shipped. I don't know who's bringing it yet, and I didn't see a lift gate on there, so I may have to have the engine hoist here in the garage when they get here and have them back up to the garage door and stick the hoist in there and grab it with the hoist, but that should be okay if we have to do that. So anyway, I'm gonna get the front clip all yanked apart because I want to be ready to start really kind of thinking about getting this engine in there, maybe even set it in before I get the transmission transfer case hooked to it, and then just make sure I'm all good or whatever, but we'll see. But I do need the front clip taken apart, and I need this tub loosened up so I can lift it up, because I think I mentioned the other day when I was down under there trying to get ready to drill that rear diff for this, there's simply not enough room between the top of the differential and the bottom of the tub for me to get my drill in there with a drill bit on it to drill this hole. So I'm not really scared of drilling the hole. I've found a spot for it, but even if I'm scrunched up down there, there's literally not enough room for my drill. So I'm gonna have to pick the tub up a little bit, so the front clip needs to come off anyway. And it was just there, I think I mentioned a video or so ago that it was just there to make me feel better and see this thing looking like a completed Jeep. So it's okay that it's got to come back apart. That part of the job I knew I was gonna have to do twice when I did it in the first place. So let's tear into it and get some stuff done here, shall we? All right, here we go. We're finally going to do these rear drums. So what we have inside of here is about as naked a drum assembly as you can get. I have installed a new brake cylinder. I've got one of my older rusty little pistons there, that or piston pin, whatever, that pushes out on the brakes. So we've got new pads, and you'll notice that when you look at these pads, if I line the metal part up, the pads are different lengths. So I've got my Jeep Rebuilder's Bible here with me, but just so you're sure you know, I'm checking my sources. This is the front of the Jeep, this direction, just in case you can't tell where we're sitting. And the Jeep, or the pad with the smaller pad, goes towards the front of the Jeep. The pad with this longer pad goes to the back of the Jeep. And basically what's going to happen is, up here on this fixed point, this portion of the pad is going to sit there. My little cylinder pin is going to go kind of lock in on the pad itself. Not sure how well you can see that, so I'll pop that out. So that's going to go in there. So this is the part where when you press on the brakes, your little cylinder inside of here expands the pistons out in both directions, pushes this out, which causes us to pivot and open up the brakes, press them against the drum. So I'm going to stop talking, put this thing together. If I hit anything major, I'll stop and tell you about it. Otherwise, I'll just let you look over my shoulder. And I do have my source right here, just so you know that I'm not just winging it. So I've got my Jeep Builder's Bible, and I've turned it to page 410 where we start putting the brakes back together. And I will be following this through just to make sure I get everything done properly all the way down. Not going to take any chances. I will mention before I really get rolling that there are a couple of tools that you're going to want to have. So this one is helpful for placing springs. This end is designed to help you put on the little pins there. I think I've got a different tool that does that. This one right here is a spring compressor. So this makes it a little bit easier. When I put this pad up here, there's a pin that's going to come through the back of the backer plate, and it's going to go through the pad, and it's going to have a spring on it with a clip, and we're going to push that spring in and turn it a quarter of a turn, and that's what's going to hold the brake in place there. So I'm just going to turn on some tunes and get started on this, and like I said, I'll just let you watch over my shoulder, and if I run into anything that I think needs further explanation, I'll come back and explain it. Okay, well, let's talk about this pin for a minute. So this is the pin that comes through the back of the backer plate. So it's going to come through from the back facing the forward. I've got one right here. You can see already done. But basically the concept with this is a little flat kind of smashed down place on the end that makes a flat tab. And that tab will go through this hole one direction, and when it turns 90 degrees, then it locks in there and it can't come out. So that's what you're trying to accomplish. And see how close I can get here. Maybe we'll be able to see this. But what you're trying to accomplish is to press that through from the back, turn it a quarter of an inch, and hold it. Okay, now what's also happening here is you've got this spring on here. So this part back here where the spring is not is what's coming through the backer plate, and then you're going through your brake shoe and you're compressing this spring down with that little tool or with a pair of needle nose pliers, and you're trying to turn this 90 degrees so it locks on there. So as that spring's trying to push back against it, it can't come off. One thing I will tell you is if you get it about 20 degrees or 10 degrees, so you think you're fooled yourself into thinking it's fully connected, and then you put your brake pad on there and you let it go, and then you're monkeying around with something else, this can come loose and shoot that thing off of there. And if you're positioned properly on your little roll around thing, this could come out and pop you right in the testicles. So I'll just mention that just so that you know that can in fact happen. And I won't tell you how it is that I know that can happen, but I know it can. So just one of the reasons that I do not really care for disc or drum brakes is all these fiddly little parts that you have to mess around with. All right, well, I thought I'd just go through this in a close-up mode and show you what I've done, and then I'm gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna get on the internet, and I'm gonna make sure I did it right. So, front of the Jeep, passenger side of the Jeep. So here's our brake shoe with our spring and our little retainer pin, and our pin is 90 degrees to the hole. Hopefully, I'll check that. Then this is the spreader bar in here for the parking brake, and you'll see that it goes in with a spring on it so it doesn't rattle. And if I come back here to the back, it's shaped such that it fits down in there okay. I don't know how to explain it except it goes further back in. Then on the back shoe, in this hole right here, I've stuck my guide for my cable down in there, and you can see that the guide has a little part here so it actually fits inside of the hole in the shoe, and then your spring goes through it. So let me see if I can show you this real quick here. So that springs through there and will go inside of the brake drum when it's in there. So that's that spring right there. This little brake retainer clip needs to be on there, and I did not have those. I had to run down to Napa and get them, but they're a pretty universal part. And so that's just gonna keep our springs from, our brakes from coming off at the top and not being, you know, just held on by the springs there. That washer right in there is the retainer clip on the emergency brake cable or emergency brake lever, and I've kind of squeezed it in a little bit there to lock it in place so it can't come off. My cable is on there, and if we look in here, you can see what it's doing with that adjuster when it adjusts. So right now there's no tension on there, so it's not clicking, but you can see what it's supposed to do is it's clicking and it's making this bigger. So one thing you do have to pay attention to with your self adjusters is one is set so that it's one facing the back. It's going to screw one direction to get bigger, and that's the direction that the clicker has to click down on it. So this one on the passenger side, when I'm clicking down, when that thing is clicking down, it's getting bigger. So again, it's spreading my shoes out to make up for the wear and tear. So I think I got it. It took me a while, and it's very frustrating at certain points. These are kind of a nightmare. That little tool, this tool right here, is supposed to make that easy. It does for taking them off because you can just jab it on there and turn until it comes off. Putting them on, not so much, so I wound up using my vice grips and just vice gripping the end so I could see what I was doing as I was trying to put that in there, because those are kind of a pain. So yeah, I watched one guy's video and he's like, oh, these are so easy. It's so easy to do brakes. It's such a tedious pain in the butt. But I got one down, and I'm gonna slap a drum on here, and assuming all's good, and I'm gonna wheel around, put the tire back on and wheel around to the other side and do that one. All right, well, my independent verification steps have been done. I went upstairs, I looked on the internet, I watched a couple of videos. Although I will say no one's brakes look like mine, except one guy. But everybody else's parts are different. Even one video that the guy said he was doing a Dana 44, nothing looked the same. I mean, the springs, the shoes, the placement of the springs, none of that looked the same. But conceptually, everything's fine. I will say I put on my safety glasses while I was working on that thing. And I think I mentioned I put my gloves on. I would strongly recommend that if you don't normally do that stuff, just do it when you're working on brakes, because especially if you're taking old brakes apart, they're dirty and dusty and stuff. But when you're working with all these springs, until you kind of figure out how they work, there's stuff shooting off there in every direction. I mean, one could pop you in the beans if you're not careful. So definitely little safety gear is a good idea. I did my evening garage Tetris game so I could get all my parts and pieces moved around, because I've got some extra ones here with this digital sign thing I'm working on. But I've got the hood behind the Jeep, I got the grill behind the Jeep, I managed to slide the fenders underneath it. So if the new motor shows up next week and doesn't come on a liftgate truck, I've got the engine hoist right outside the garage door over there, so I can just quickly grab that thing in, roll it over, lift that motor up out of the truck and set it down inside of the garage here. So hopefully it's coming on a lift gate. I don't know, but I'll find out once it either gets here, or hopefully when I get my actual shipping information, then I'll know. But for right now, I'm going to wrap this up and get it in the can. And next time you see me, I should be getting that new motor here.